Hi everybody and welcome to the Helen Winder Show. I'm Helen Winder and my lovely guest today is Lesley Morrissey from Inside News, who is a reputation marketer. Hi Lesley, thanks for joining
Hi,
me.
Helen. That's very welcome. I'm pleased to be here.
So great to have you here. So tell us about yourself. Who are you, where you live and about your business?
Well, I started off in the Isle of Man, so I'm Manx. I was born in the Isle of Man, but I've lived all over the place. I've lived in London, I've lived in Wales, I've lived in Germany, Libya, and then in Dubai for 17 years, and now I'm settled in Essex. So I get a lot of jokes about being an Essex girl. But I'm not, I'm Manx. I've been married more than once. Let's not go into that. I have two grown-up children, Ellie, who's just coming up to 35, and she just started her own business manufacturing shirts, which is a whole story all of its own. Married to a successful tattoo artist, and my son Donovan lives and works in Dubai with his girlfriend Sarah, and he went back there because, having grown up there, he never really settled in the UK, and as far as he's concerned, Dubai is home, so that's where he is, and he's been there for about 2.5 years. So that's a family out of the way. I started Inside News in January 2000 by mistake. And I think all the best things happen by mistake. I now have 3 business cards, 4 websites, 5 web addresses, and I'm in the process of bringing all this into line to reduce the confusion for people. So, Inside News started really to deliver an internal newsletter for one of the Ford Motor Company sites. And that happened because I was qualified in human resources, and I was a member of the Institute of Management, and I went along to an Institute of Management meeting. This wasn't long after I came back from Dubai, and I was just trying to set up an HR and training consultancy, so I wasn't very busy at the time. I thought, I'll go to this meeting, and it was their AGM, and somebody said, we're trying to improve our newsletter, which at that time was 2 or 3 sheets of A4 that had been photocopied and posted, and does anybody have anything that they could do to help? And I put my head above the parapet and said, well, I've done newsletters before because I used to do them for Dubai Duty Free where I used to work, and they went, oh good, well would you help us? And so we produced a newsletter, and then in not long after that, I had a phone call from a chap at Ford, and he said, I'm the chairman of the Institute of Management branch group that you belong to, and I'm looking for somebody to do something similar for Ford to the newsletter you've done, or I like what you've done, would you come and talk to us? So I went in, and I spent probably about 3 hours with him. He explained in a lot of detail what they were looking for, and it was an internal newsletter to be printed, but they have their own printing press on site, to promote the technology developments, charity support, and all the other company information internally. There was about 5,500 employees on the site, and the idea was that whilst a lot of them had computers in the workshop, they didn't have access to computers, so email wasn't necessarily going to reach everybody, so they wanted 4 pages of A4 to start with, and they already had something going, and I was in competition with a couple of other companies, and I got the contract.
Wow.
So, at the end of 1999, I decided that if I was going to do this job, I needed to have a brand for it, because I couldn't do it under the training brand. It would just dilute the brand too much. So I started a second sole tradership, and called it Inside News because it was internal newsletters, and that's where the name of the company came from.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these things start?
Absolutely. And I do have people who said, oh, Inside News, is that insider trading? No, it's not. But, so I did that for 3 or 4 years, and then the European Operating Committee went, this is Ford's European Operating Committee, were cutting costs, and internal communications was considered to be nice but not necessary. Which I don't necessarily agree with, but that's what their decision was. So the contract came to an end in 2003. So by 2005, more people were on the web,
Yeah.
and therefore my focus for the business had moved from newsletters to web content. And I've always been interested in how people process information. Way back in 1980 something, when I was working in Dubai for the duty free, I created their newsletter, their internal newsletter, which is more like an A4 magazine. I think we were running at about 48 pages by the time we finished with it. And the very first issue was, again, before we had computers in-house. It would be 1986, something like that.
Yeah.
And I sent the typed up version, because we had electronic typewriters, we were that far advanced, to the agency. And we were working with J. Walter Thompson at that time, which is a big, well-known international advertising agency. So our accounts executive sent me back a galley, which is a sort of proof of the layout, so I could see what it looked like. And the headline on the front page, because it looked a little bit like a baby newspaper, I typed it carefully in capital letters, because I thought it's a headline and it's important. And it had come back that it was in bold and it was in big letters, but it was in lower case. It was in sentence case. So I, being a bit bossy and thinking I knew everything, picked the phone up and rang up this accounts executive and said, "Why have you put my headline in lower case?" And he said, "Do you want people to read it?" And I said, "Of course I do. And it's important. That's why it was in capitals." And he said, "But people can't read capital letters easily." That was a bit of a oh. He said, "And because the words have no shape, when everything's in capitals, they're little blocks." So I said, "So what it should have is a capital letter for every word." At which point he said, "Yes, if you want people to read it one word at a time." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Quite." So he said, people read the thought, not the words. So that was like a revelation, and I got really interested in how people process information. And over the years, I've learned loads. I've learned from people like Jakob Nielsen, who's a usability expert who charges people about $35,000 to look at their homepage, from Steve Krug, who wrote the book Don't Make Me Think, all about web usability, and from lots of other sources as well, because I'm like a magpie and I just got interested. So I called it readability, but nobody's ever heard of that. But actually, it's about how the brain and the eye process information.
Yeah.
So I got on a mission about that, and it's different on screen to what it is on paper. So as you've probably gathered by now, I get on the soapbox and go for it when people talk about this. And the strange thing is, when people go on graphic design courses, this is not part of the training. It's not part of the equation. So often really good designers don't understand that some of the things they do make really good messages almost impossible to read.
Yeah.
The most common of those is you get a black magazine page with white writing on. And if you've got, I'm not talking about just a headline, I'm talking about an article. It's almost impossible to read it because you get really bad dazzle.
Yeah.
Your eyes find it very difficult to process that message, because your brain's working so hard to sort of keep the words still and identify what the letters are, that the comprehension level drops. And there's a lot of things like that. So that sort of was my USP, and I was writing a lot of websites, I was working with a lot of web designers. And of course, then I started doing social media, and as I don't know if your listeners know, you and I met through a company called eAcademy, which is an online networking company.
That's right.
And I worked for them running the support team and the best practice team, which you were involved with. And I learned a lot about networking, so online networking. And of course, we were encouraged to join LinkedIn, to join Facebook when it started, to join Twitter when it started. And that meant that I was ahead of the curve a little bit, so people kept coming to me and saying, "So how do you do that?" And then in 2010, I started doing workshops. and they became webinars, and they became a website with tutorials on. And then I'm going back round the loop again because I was doing workshops on LinkedIn last year and tutorials again now. I'm just starting at the moment doing some drip feed ones where there's 15 minutes 3 times a week to take people through a process of learning how to do things. Because I think people go on seminars and webinars and they get a big chunk of information and they never get started with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, well, what do I do with this now? Once once you're back in your own seat, and you think, I've got all of this, but where do I start?
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit of overwhelm because people come away with lots of things and think, oh, I need to do all this, and their head says, and even though we're all intelligent beings and we know that we could do just a small thing, there's that sort of thing in your head that says, I need to sit down with this and spend some time getting my head around it all and coming up with a plan. And of course, that's the bit that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Is they don't have the 2 hours to sit and process through everything. And I always used to say, if you go to a conference, book another day off, because when you get back from the conference, you're going to have a lot of stuff you want to look at, think about, decide what to do with it, decide who to contact and whether you should be in touch with this person or that person or follow up on things. And of course, life is busy and we all come back to work and we sit at our desks and there's a paper and we get stuck in.
Yeah.
And all that stuff disappears.
Very true, very true. Gosh, yeah. I mean, I've done it myself.
Well, we've all done it. I've done it. I mean, I used to go to the Professional Speakers Association conferences, and I'd come back with loads and loads of notes and stuff, and they used to sit on my desk looking at me and making me feel guilty for months. And I just never had the time to actually take that step, and it wasn't high enough on my importance list to do. Anyway, we diversify a little bit. But you introduced me as a reputation marketer, and that again was one of these things that happened a bit by accident.
Okay.
I've got a huge network because I've networked online and offline a lot because I know that's how my business grows.
Yeah.
I don't do sales. I tend to rely on meeting people who get what I do, who will then ring me up and say, will you do that for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was one of the people I've met a long time ago, and I trained to do book editing as somewhere along the line, and I actually ghost wrote his half of a book because he's a brilliant speaker but not so good at the writing side. His name is Peter Roper. I don't know if you've ever met him or you know Peter Roper.
I've certainly heard his name.
Yeah, Andy Lapata, who's a star networking guru, wrote a book called And Death Came Third back in about 2005, I think, or 2006.
Yeah.
And I edited Andy's half and wrote Peter's half, and then one of my editing colleagues edited the final edit for the whole thing. So Peter rang me up, and we kept in touch, and he said, I want to do a book, and I wonder if you want to get involved with it. And I said, sure. And he said, well, we can either do it that I pay you for editing it, or do you want to co-author it with me? And I've got a title for the book. And I said, what's the title? And he said, The Reputation Game. And I went, oh, yeah. So the title in this book came first, which is quite unusual because books often go through a number of titles before they arrive anywhere. So Peter and I spent a year putting this together. And basically, once we got to the writing stage, we used to have a Skype call on a Sunday morning, and then I would write on Sunday afternoon. So it wasn't it wasn't getting in the way of our other businesses.
Yeah.
And Bookshaker published it. It's been out probably just over a year now. And it was only when it was published, because at that point I then got Inside News, which was sort of the consulting bit and some of the writing. I got a Lesley Writer brand because I got so fed up with people who kept saying to me, so what does Inside News do? And I thought, well, I use Lesley Writer as my online ID, so everybody knows it, so I'll just use that as a sub-brand, as a sort of writing bit. And then I've got Step-by-Step Online Marketing, which is the training online training website. And I thought, actually, I need to pull this together because I had too many business cards. I still have too many business cards, but I'm working on it. The next iteration, there'll only be 2, not 3 or 4. And I'm going, well, what is it I actually do? Because I know I write and I know I train people in online stuff. But I thought there needs to be something that pulls all that together. And it was only when the book came out and I was having a conversation with Peter, and he just rebranded himself as the family businessman. And I went, reputation. That's what I do. I help people to create the messages that present their reputation to the world, and I help people to get that message out using online marketing. So it all fits together perfect.
When you say reputation marketing, it gets you thinking. It doesn't get you thinking, what on earth are you talking about? It actually gets you thinking, yeah, it comes down to reputation and how you present yourself, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it's astonishing how naive people are about what people can and cannot see online. And you know, part of the book we did a lot of research, obviously, to find out how people did things, and we did 4 case studies. And the 4 case studies, one was a consultant, management consultant, quite high profile, also does speaking. We had a SME that had about a dozen staff and was very successful. We had a corporate, which was part of Inchcape, it was one of their divisions, and we had a not-for-profit, which was a charity, which was the Essex and Herts Air Ambulance Trust. And so we had these 4 businesses, and we asked them a lot of questions about their reputation management and what they did. And they, apart from the air ambulance, which had actually got a communications division that they set up, and they were quite savvy about it, the others were absolutely paranoid about social media. They were scared of what it might do to them.
Yeah.
And to the point that they weren't really using it at all. The Inchcape were using a Facebook intranet, but only internally. They weren't using it as a means of getting a message out, because they were frightened that if they let stuff loose, they'd say all kinds of things that they couldn't monitor. Also, the SME was a logistics company, operated worldwide, and they were worried about visibly saying things and getting into conversations they thought might damage them in some way, because they do ship stuff back to China, and they said, you know, not everybody gets that. They don't think it's right to have things manufactured overseas, but it's a commercial entity, you know. And bizarrely, they got the consultant who has now bought a social media company himself, but he doesn't do it. He has somebody who does it. So he has eventually got it, but it's taken him like 2 years to get to that stage. I've lectured, and I lectured at INSEAD, which is the French University in London, on the 2nd year master's students course in branding and product development, and I was on one of their digital courses, and I asked them, I said, who's got a Facebook account? And these students are in their early 20s, and they all said, yes, we've got a Facebook account. I said, so what has your Facebook account got to do with your employer? And they said, nothing. It's nothing to do with my employer. It's not their business. That's my private account. And I said, because they can see, if they want to, they can see your account. Unless you've got it really locked down. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you have gone through your privacy settings. And they all looked at me in astonishment, went, what privacy settings? I'm joking, you don't understand this. And it's you know, when I said that to them, I said, your boss can see what you write. And they went, that's not fair. I said, well, it's not a case of being fair. It's a case of this is how the world is. If you choose to participate on Facebook, then you have to live with consequences. And, you know, we've all heard the horror stories about people who've done mad things. My daughter's current business was launched because of social media, because one event happened, she handled it incredibly well, and that's proud mother speaking here. She has an international business out of it in less than a month.
Yeah. Social media is so powerful. You have to, you know, you need to know and understand how to drive it.
And people think it's just Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. And there obviously there's lots of other social media platforms, but they forget about blogging, they forget about article marketing, they forget about email marketing, they forget about data capture and ethical bribes. So there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
And it all revolves around having content on wherever people go to check you out, which is usually either your profile on something like LinkedIn or your website, that keeps people there long enough to make them feel they want to do something. They want to take action, they want to make a decision to get in touch, to find something out.
And it's having the right content, isn't it? And with the right words to draw people in. And like you say, not capitals on a title on every single word.
Yeah. And I mean, the interesting thing is most people who have their websites written by somebody in-house or externally, they don't always get that the website is supposed to be written for the reader. So your homepage is not about the company, it's not about how long you've been in business, how many generations that have been in it. It's about getting the benefits of what you do across fast, because people they don't read every word you write, they scan.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a good hook on your headline that says, is this your problem? And people go, yes, that's exactly what I've got a problem with, therefore I'm now going to read some more.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then it's the making people take action. Most websites are really boring, and they're all about what we do, who we are, how we work. And nobody's interested in what we do. They're interested in what I get.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's just taking the same information, but it's rotating it around and looking at it from the customer perspective. That's what commercial copywriting, a good commercial copywriter will do that. There's a lot of people out there who call themselves copywriters that don't do that. And I get quite irritated by the fact that they get paid lots of money for doing something that doesn't work.
Mm. I suppose some people, they think, oh yeah, I can put some words together, but it's so much more than that. You've got to first of all understand the person's business, what it is they're delivering, whether it be a product or a service. It's much more, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is, and it's knowing who you're trying to reach. That's critical, really.
Absolutely, yeah, because there's keywords involved when it comes to websites and location, especially with the internet now compared to when my Xerox days. I remember that. Yes. I remember the very first single page, being launched, and everybody was hanging over one single PC,
Yeah. Yeah, well, we had, when I first, duty free, our first computers were Wangs, which I don't think exist anymore, and they were black screens with orange writing on.
Yes. Oh, the days.
So, yes, Macintoshes had white screens with black writing on, and it's the easiest for the brain to process. So you notice that now we've all gone to something that looks like a piece of paper on the screen, because that's the way our brain finds that much easier.
That's right.
To process.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Xerox, we had our own 6085 workstations. And the funny thing is, you see these little documents on your desktops now, like a Word document or a file drawer, or a folder as we call it now. We had exactly that. So it's quite interesting how things have sort of evolved back again. But things have progressed so quickly, and it is keeping up with it, keeping up with the hit words, the keywords, the lingo that's out there as well. Because even the way people describe things change, and I suppose that is when you get a really good copywriter or a reputation marketer like yourself. It's knowing that they will understand what will work at that moment in time as well.
Yeah, and I developed an acronym which I was quite pleased with, and I've got a little sort of logo that goes with it called RAVE. And RAVE stands for reputation, authority, and authority is for being an authority in your industry. So you turn into the go-to person for when people go, oh, I need to know about, oh, I'll go to that person because they're an authority. visibility, which is if you're not visible, people forget you exist. And I know I've got business because I'm very active on social media from people who I've met or I've been in contact with years ago, but they haven't forgotten about me because they keep seeing me all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, if I'd have not been visible, they would have forgotten I existed. Yeah, and the E is for expertise, and that is basically showing off what you know, because realistically you tend to get testimonials from people who've experienced what you do, and there's a limited number of people who can do that. But if you've got examples of your expertise in blogs, so for instance you share your knowledge in blogs, in webinars and so on, a lot more people are able to experience your expertise. Therefore, there's a lot more people out there saying that person's really good at that.
Yeah.
So it's those spell rave, so reputation, authority, visibility, expertise, and I think that encompasses what it's all about. Is, you know, if you don't take control of your reputation, not just to promote yourself, but to protect yourself and to have a plan, so you're going you know where you're going, it's not an accident. You know, your reputation should never be an accident. It should be done deliberately, and it should be something you take control out of. I was just reading on Alan Stevens' newsletter this morning that when you're a professional speaker, for the whole time you are at the venue, from the moment you step through the door to the moment you're well on your way home, you should never do anything that may get people thinking bad things about you in any way. You should never make throwaway comments, even if you're off the stage, because someone will hear them and they make a judgment about you.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. If you think about it, our time there, whether it be walking to go and get a drink, to, you know, talking on stage, to sitting down and eating a biscuit, you're on stage, you are visible.
Yes, absolutely. And it is, people listen and overhear, and they then talk about you to other people. And if it isn't congruent with your message, it invalidates everything you say on the platform.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And that applies to everything else. That's the same with social media. You know, there was I was at a networking meeting about a year ago, and there was a small company. They were interviewing for, well, they had been interviewing for a new role, and they'd had a CV from this particular girl which looked very good. So they invited her for an interview. She interviewed extremely well, and they were about to send the letter out saying, "We're pleased to tell you you've been successful," when someone in the office said, "And have you checked her out online?" So they Googled her, and her Facebook page was visible. So they looked in all sorts of places. They looked on her Facebook page, and her language was appalling. And it wasn't, you know, an isolated swear word. This was just ran through. The way in which she typed was really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And they didn't offer her the job. But their perception was, that's fine if she can clean it up for an interview, but when she's here and she's settled in, if that's the way she talks, we don't really want people to be working in an environment where someone speaks like that.
Yeah.
Especially in a small team, so that she didn't get the job. And she would have no idea, and that was her social media that did that for her. And we all know of instances where people have posted things on social media with disastrous results. And
that's right.
Positive results as well. I mean, it's also an amazing way of making things happen.
Absolutely, it is so powerful, you know. And the strangest thing is, through doing the interviews that I've done, you know, the only promotion I've done has been through obviously social media, but I haven't sent out newsletters. I've connected with people that I know would be right for the show, and I've also used my network. You know, I contacted yourself, and we've known each other for 10 years or so, haven't we?
Must be getting on for that.
It must be, yeah. But you know, the thing is that because I've already got visibility there through previous businesses, people know me, and they know what I'm about. They know where I come from. They know the type of person I am personally, as well as business on the stage. It's fantastic, and you know, I'm going to be using social media to promote all the interviews. You know, that's how it runs. But you do have to be also very careful that you are consistent and not lumpy bumpy.
Yes.
So listen, you know, I know how good you are because I've known you a long time, and I've watched you, and I've seen the results of you supporting people. How would you, very quickly, how do people engage with you? You know, how would you work with them? Just give us a very quick overview.
Well, typically people bump into me either online or offline networking, and people refer me, which is great. So some of the things that I think are the downs in my career is I'm rubbish at sales, in the sense that I won't pick the phone up and make cold calls. But I do know that networking works, and all my businesses always come to me from referrals and marketing via networking, both online and offline, and it's great. But it is a bit unpredictable, so you have to do a lot of it to make sure that you've got a consistent flow. People generally will either email me or ring me up and explain to me what it is they want to do. I will generally want to look at what they're doing at the moment to find out where they're at. And then I put together a proposal which will give them an idea of how it all works, make some suggestions so they know where we're thinking of starting from, and give them some idea of costs. And then it's up to them. Mostly they go ahead, I'm delighted to say. I've never sold on price. I'm not horribly expensive. I'm not the cheapest either, but people get value for what they do, and still get a bit extra from just, it's not just what it says on the proposal, they'll get other things as well. And I do work from home, but I have people I work with as well who also work from home, so we're sort of a virtual business, and in this day and age you can do that. So if people want to talk to me, I'm more than happy to have phone calls or Skype calls. I don't mind. I'm on Skype, and I quite often have client meetings, and that I have every month on a Monday, one of my clients, and I have a Skype call. I've got other phone call clients that I sit and talk to them once a month about their blogs, and then we write what we've discussed. So it's up to them. I mean, some people say, this is our old website, we don't like it, can you do something to improve it? And I'll ask them some questions, and then we'll go from there, and I'll come up with suggestions, and then write the content when they're happy with what I've suggested. And they will say, no, I don't want to do that, I want to do that. So it's all, you know, it's a joint process, really.
It's a relationship, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And the longer I work with people, the better I get to know their company. So I can put words into people's mouths to some extent. It sounds a bit arrogant, but it's not meant to be. But, you know, some of my clients literally have one client I've been working with for years and years, and on and off. And he came back to me last year and he said, look, I need 2 blogs a week. And can you write those if I just give you a subject? Can you go and, you know, get the information and write the blogs? And let me just look at them before they're published. And I said, yeah, sure. I've worked with his business now since he opened where he's at now, so it's several years. And I've written award presentations for him. I've written web copy for him. I've written scripts for his videos that he runs in his waiting area. And so it was not that difficult. But obviously he's putting new things in all the time, so I had to sort of get up to date with some of the things he's doing now. But we talk. So I write something, send it over, and he does some corrections, sends it back, and then I publish them for him.
It's quite a wide range. Yeah, collaboration is absolutely key in communication. You know, keeping in contact and is really, really key. And I think actually that applies to many businesses out there, but you offer such a wide range of solutions, support, that I think is really nice, because then people, you know, you get to know them, they get to know you, you understand their business, and the service can expand, like you say, from the web to the newsletters to their speeches to their blogs. And then you mentioned even the script for videos. That's absolutely fantastic, Lesley.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did a couple of those for the air ambulance because I volunteer for them, which is why they got roped into the book. And they'd done a corporate video, but the CEO had to voice it, and she didn't really feel confident. And she said, can you have a look at it and see what you can do? And I did it when I was at Duty Free. I did a 4-minute video, and I did the voiceover for that, you know, the sort of script for it. So I've done it before, and I know the importance of the timing, and, you know, when the picture changes, you have to speak at a certain speed and that. So it wasn't brand new to me, but it's just getting the message so it doesn't sound plastic.
Yes.
When someone's the problem is when you read something, you sound as though you're reading unless you're a trained radio actor.
Yes, that's very true.
To do it. Your voice settles into that sort of and everybody falls asleep. So it's almost a case of, if you're going to be saying it, is having bullet points rather than having it written out and reading it. But for when I was writing it for a professional announcer to do, I knew they'd be able to do something with it, so I just wrote what needed to be said, and I tried to make sure it sounded right. So I always say, if you've written something and you're not sure if it works, read it out loud, because if it sounds clunky when you read it out loud, rewrite it.
It's very true. And you know, Graham always giggles at, and my husband always giggles at things that I write, because I write it as if I was speaking it, because that's just me. But of course, he's a bit better with words than myself, and then he'll sit there giggling, and I'm like, what are you giggling at? He said, oh no, it's just a general conversation going on in this blog.
Yeah, and I mean, it's quite interesting, because a lot of people think that, oh, I write the way I speak, and then if most people don't actually. They do and they don't. They use the tone that they speak in.
Yeah.
But the actual, and I do this, I try to write conversationally. The problem is that when we speak, we stop in the middle of sentences. We have expression in our voice that helps people to understand, which we don't get when you're reading something off a page. So you have to be better with things like punctuation, and your grammar needs to polish up a bit, and obviously spelling has to be spot on, in order for people to be able to read it and feel like it's being spoken.
And breathe.
So there is yes. Yeah, well, there's way back when I was learning writing skills, somebody once said something to me, and I've shared this many times, and it's one idea per paragraph, one thought per sentence, and I think it's a really, really good rule to work on.
I like that.
And I cheat sometimes, and I split ideas into 2 paragraphs, because I believe white space helps people read. Once my paragraph goes beyond 5 lines, I get very antsy, and I start looking for somewhere to break it up.
Yes.
Because you give someone a big wad text, and unless they're an academic, the brain goes, oh, that looks difficult, I'll come back to that later, and they never do.
Well, listen, Lesley, I know you are a really busy bee, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and share, you know, about yourself and about the business. Just very quickly, 3 top tips to sort of share with our listeners.
Okay. Number 1, something that's become extremely clear to me that many people don't do, to know exactly what your ideal client profile looks like. Now, this is not just a general grouping like accountants or small business owners. So, for instance, I did this for mine not all that long ago, and I know it's difficult. And mine is very, very detailed. I'm going to run through it quickly because I know we're time poor, but if I said what is my ideal client, it would be a seriously entrepreneurial male business owner who has a growing organisation with at least 5 staff and a turnover of probably more than $500,000. They're probably late 30s, early 40s. They're very sales driven and focused. They enjoy getting out and meeting prospective clients. They see marketing and all that sort of online stuff is important, but not their thing, and they probably don't have enough people or the expertise in the team to do it in-house. So we work with them on the strategy and either train their staff in the basics or deliver a marketing package for them on an ongoing basis. So it's really detailed.
Yeah.
So people, if they're going to really be successful, they need to have client profiles, and they might have more than one, but that's okay. They need to be very, very clear about who it is they're trying to reach. Tip 2,
Yeah.
Don't just plan how much you want to turn over a month.
Okay.
Accounts is not my favourite subject. I work backwards. I go and give it to an accountant to play with the numbers, but I do look at what I'm doing. I look at what is it I want to turn over, and then what activities do I have to do to achieve that amount. And when I first started doing this, the surprise was that I could do, obviously you can do several different things, but it suddenly dawned on me that if I had 2 clients doing that, it would be the equivalent of having 30 clients doing smaller things. And my brain went, it's easier to find 2 clients than it is to find 30.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I should be focusing on those particular activities. That doesn't mean I don't do other things. Of course I do. You know, everybody does. It's like I don't only work with men, and I work with a lot of women as well. But my ideal client would fit that profile, and
Yep.
my turnover is based on core things that are where I can give lots of value,
Mm-hmm.
and they're prepared to pay for it. People tend to go, I just need to do a lot of work to make some money, and I think thinking about how you make the money that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tip 3,
Yeah.
find out what your clients really appreciate and do more of it. I think if you can aim to surprise your clients with what you deliver as often as possible, you'll keep them forever.
Yeah.
And they'll tell all their friends. And it's quite hard to get people to tell their friends. People whinge like mad when you do things wrong, but when you do things right, all you're doing is meeting their expectations. So that's what they think you should be doing in the first place. So you have to do something that exceeds that steps out from what they expect and gives them a nice surprise, and then they really refer you to lots of other people. That's my tip 3.
I love them, absolutely. You know, like you say, knowing exactly who your ideal client is in detail really helps you focus down. Knowing what your plan is around financials, yeah, we can all set a target, we can all write a big number on the wall, but how are you going to achieve it, and what do you need to do to get there? Not by running yourself ragged, but what is easier to deliver to achieve it, and definitely to find out what it is that the clients love about you, and and exceed it, because then they're going to talk, they're going to share, and and spread the word. But also they're just going to keep coming back, and they'll love you to pieces and never go.
Yeah, and pay you lots of money for doing it as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, listen, very quickly, you're on Twitter, so what's your Twitter handle?
At Lesley Writer. That's LesleyWriter.
Brilliant. And your website?
Is www.insidenews.co.uk. Well, that's one of them.
That's one.
The online marketing one is www.stepbystep-onlinemarketing.com.
Wonderful. Well, listen, thank you so much, Lesley. It's been an absolute pleasure having you, and you never know, maybe we can meet up again and share some more with our listeners.
Fantastic. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, and thank you so much to my listeners. I'll be back soon with another interview for you.